Do you live in Michigan, Texas, or Georgia? Listen closely. The jobs you currently have might disappear in just a few weeks. There is no official statement, no alarm bells. It's just a quiet retreat of the companies that once built America, gradually leaving behind a gap that the states can no longer fill.
More fallout from Trump's tariffs. Automaker Stellantis is temporarily halting production at some of its auto assembly plants.
5 of the largest American companies have just withdrawn from the domestic market. Not because of opposition, but for survival. Tens of thousands of jobs disappeared overnight. Millions of people are preparing to enter the spiral of unemployment, poverty, and homelessness. The once prosperous states are now on the brink of collapse. In this video, we will take you to the top 10 states on the brink of crisis as the wave of withdrawal by major corporations begins to sweep everything away. This is no longer a warning, it's the reality happening right now. And if you are living in one of these 10 states, your financial future may have already been decided without you even knowing. Let's start with the first state, once the most bustling industrial center in the United States. Do you still remember the sound of the assembly lines in Detroit? The sound of machinery, the whistle of the end of the shift, once the heartbeat of America. Today, in that very place, there is silence. A terrifying silence, as if an entire era has come to an end. Last May, the Stellantis Group, the name behind Chrysler, Jeep, and Dodge, announced the closure of 5 production lines in Michigan, directly affecting more than 900 workers, primarily in Flint and Detroit. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Michigan has lost more than 35% of manufacturing jobs in just the past 10 years. And specifically Detroit, once known as Motor City, now has an unemployment rate 1.8 times the national average. A 58-year-old worker living in Flint who had worked at a Stellantis factory for 27 years, from when he was young until his hair turned grey. When the factory announced an indefinite shutdown, he said, "I don't need an apology. I just wish I were 40 again to start over." When a state loses its core industry, it's not just the workers who lose their jobs, they also lose their faith, community, and sense of purpose. The towns around Detroit are turning into zombie loops. The corner grocery store is losing customers. The school cut its budget because families moved away. The elderly remain, living on pensions that can't keep up with skyrocketing costs: gas, electricity, medicine. The community doesn't collapse in noise, but rather fractures little by little in silence. Fortunately, in Michigan, some organizations and brands are still making an effort. Humana, the health insurance program for seniors, has partnered with local churches to provide free healthcare and transportation to hospitals. Or GoodRx, helping retirees find cheaper medications when they no longer have company insurance. But somewhere, a question still echoes in many people's minds. When the industry that was once the soul of Michigan is no longer there, what do we have left to call core? Have you ever lived in Michigan or worked in the manufacturing industry? Please share your experience in the comments. Your story could be a comfort to many people who are feeling lost right now. And unfortunately, Michigan is not the only state. If you're choosing between buying medicine or buying milk, you'll find the latter extremely familiar. At retirement age, the best thing to do is to live leisurely and happily. But for retirees in Illinois, that may forever be a distant luxury. A 73-year-old woman living in the Joliet suburbs shared, "I used to be proud of living off my self-contributed pension. But now I have to cut back on everything, from breakfast to my arthritis medication." Since the Target store near her house closed, she has to take a nearly 1-hour bus ride to shop and often chooses canned food instead of fresh vegetables, simply because it's cheaper. She is not the only one. In Chicago, Springfield, or Rockford, thousands of Americans who have lived and worked their entire lives are being pushed to the margins of life by market prices. When large retail corporations like Walmart, Target, and Amazon began to shrink their supply chains in Illinois due to the impact of the trade war and high import taxes, consumer prices surged, especially for food, household goods, and pharmaceuticals. According to the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, food prices at major supermarkets in the state have increased by an average of 13.7% compared to the same period last year, the highest increase since 2008. In particular, over-the-counter medications and healthcare products for the elderly have increased by more than 20% due to disrupted supply chains from Asian suppliers. For the retired working class, prices are not just numbers. They are the fragile boundary between living decently and struggling to get by. They no longer have income to compensate. They can't work overtime to keep up with hyperinflation. And while companies pull out to optimize profits, those who once contributed to society are left behind, in cold apartments and empty refrigerators. To provide some support for the elderly in Illinois, Walgreens Senior Discount Days program is still offering great deals for those over 60, especially on over-the-counter medications. But there remains a question. When a nation leaves those who built it to struggle between medicine and food, is it still a grateful society? Are you or your parents living on a fixed pension? Share your story. It might make someone feel understood and less lonely. And if in Illinois, the price isn't in money, but in the dignity of old age. Then in Texas, middle-class life is also declining, as people have to sell what was once their pride, just to survive. I used to believe I was a part of the great machine of modern America. But when they downsized, I was just a cost to be cut. At the age of 60, I decided to switch to selling used items online to survive. That's the story of a 60-year-old man who used to be a night shift coordinator at an Apple auxiliary warehouse near Round Rock. He once believed that the job he thought would last until retirement had disappeared, without any prior warning. Texas used to be a strategic distribution hub for many tech corporations, including Apple, with logistics systems in Austin and Dallas serving the national supply chain. But when Apple moved iPhone assembly to India and reduced imports from China, the distribution centers in the U.S. also shrank. The quiet withdrawal of supply chains not only causes workers to lose their jobs, but also fractures the entire local economic ecosystem. Many people aged 50 to 65 cannot re-enter the new technology labor market. No longer having jobs to keep them busy and not young enough to start over, they find themselves in a silence between two generations. If a person's value is only measured by their work performance, then when they lose their job, what do they have left? Have you or a family member ever lost a job in middle age? Do you feel that today's society is too harsh on those who have been loyal to a single job for their entire lives? Share your thoughts, so we no longer feel like we are the only ones starting from scratch. The paradox is that in this list, it's not just the poor states, but even the wealthy ones, those likened to the most bustling urban centers in the United States. The elderly who once thought they would live there for a lifetime now just want to leave. The story of the next state will surely make you ponder. New York, once dubbed the consumer and logistics hub of America, is witnessing a quiet wave of withdrawal by retail, technology, and support service companies. Corporations like Amazon, Apple, and Target are cutting branches, warehouses, or relocating operations to states with lower costs. According to the NYC Comptroller's Office, more than 2,700 retail stores closed in 2024 alone, largely due to rising logistics costs after partner companies withdrew from the state. Housing prices continue to rise, while public services, especially elder care, are increasingly overwhelmed or cut back. An 80-year-old man born and raised in Brooklyn shared, "In the past, as long as you worked hard, you could live here. Now, even if you don't go anywhere, the costs will still find you." Now, he is considering moving back to Pennsylvania, where the cost of living is lower, even though he knows that it also means saying goodbye to a lifetime of memories. The truth is, New York didn't collapse overnight, but it wears away little by little, with each increase in electricity prices, each small supermarket closing down, each elderly person leaving without anyone to replace them. And for those who once considered this place home, the painful thing is not the poverty, but the feeling of no longer belonging. In New York, the organization City Meals on Wheels continues to provide thousands of hot meals each day to elderly individuals living alone. In addition, Aetna Medicare New York has launched the Senior Wellness Credit Program, reimbursing a portion of medical expenses for low-income seniors affected by rising prices. But the question remains, can a city still retain its soul when the people who built it are gradually leaving in silence? Have you ever lived in New York, or do you have elderly relatives living here? How do they feel about life now? Please share, because it might help someone out there feel less lonely in a city that is no longer the same. My daughter doesn't like toys anymore, not because she's grown up, but because she knows the family can no longer afford them. The gentle yet poignant words of a 39-year-old mother living in Columbus, Ohio. She used to work in a warehouse specializing in distributing MGA toys, the brand behind the famous Bratz and LOL Surprise dolls. Now she is working as a temporary server, with an income insufficient to buy the very items she used to package every day. MGA Entertainment, one of the largest toy manufacturers in the United States, has officially announced the relocation of 40% of its production from China to India, Vietnam, and Indonesia. The consequence is the disruption of the domestic supply chain in the US, scarcity of goods, and thousands of jobs at logistics centers in Ohio being interrupted. According to Columbus Business First, more than 2,200 jobs in the logistics sector in central Ohio were reduced or temporarily suspended in the first 6 months of 2025. Among them, most are located in warehouse clusters serving toy and imported consumer goods companies. Ohio used to be the backbone of the Midwest supply chain, but when the flow of goods is redirected and companies cut costs, the workers quietly push prosperity away from their own homeland. From unemployment to lack of trust, from children without toys to parents without hope. That is the silent cycle of society. You think, a toy might seem like a trivial thing. But if even that is no longer available, then what can we leave for the next generation? In this context, some brands like Thrive Market, a platform providing affordable groceries subsidized for low-income families, have partnered with community centers in Ohio. Additionally, Blue Cross Blue Shield Ohio is also offering flexible health insurance packages for those who have temporarily lost their jobs. Have you ever worked in the distribution or logistics industry? Or have you lived in Ohio and felt the change? Share your story, so others know they are not alone. We have traveled through 5 states, each carrying its own pain, from the factory closures in Michigan to the fading tech dream in California. But that's not all. But the remaining 5 names will make you think more about the future of the very state you live in. In the next state, the concern isn't about toys, but about the aluminum bars that once helped build America. And now, the material is also leaving this country. Welcome to Pennsylvania. My grandfather used to cast aluminum by hand. My father drove a truck delivering aluminum all over the state. As for my grandson, he might have to import aluminum from Europe. This ironic reality is happening in Pennsylvania, once the pride of America's steel industry. But now, even aluminum bars, the metal that helped build millions of homes, cars, and airplane frames, are no longer staying. In May 2025, Alcoa, the leading aluminum corporation in the United States, confirmed that it would shift most of its aluminum production from Canada away from the US market to Europe due to the impact of the new tax policy imposed on imported metals. According to Reuters and the US Chamber of Commerce, the new tax has increased the cost of importing aluminum from Canada to the US by more than 20%, causing companies like Alcoa to consider supplying the US market as no longer financially viable. In Pittsburgh alone, the headquarters of Alcoa, more than 600 jobs related to transportation and warehousing are being indirectly affected. A 67-year-old man who used to be a technician at a small aluminum smelter in Johnstown shared, "We used to see aluminum as white gold. It built houses, made ships, created America. Now it's being shipped elsewhere, and the people here are being left behind." He and many locals are not sad about losing their jobs, but they are sad about something bigger, deeper, the feeling that old values are being replaced by silence. Alcoa's shift has caused the prices of domestic aluminum products to rise sharply, from window frames, kitchen appliances, to cars. For the elderly living on a fixed pension, each round of home upgrades, each repair, has become more expensive and extravagant. The community feels disappointed. An industry that not only created jobs, but was once a source of pride, is disappearing without a farewell. The story of Pennsylvania makes us wonder, if the things that made America, like aluminum, steel, cars, are no longer here, then where will the memory of a once strong and united country remain? Did you or your family ever work in the steel, construction, or materials manufacturing industries? Share your story, because the memory of American labor deserves to be heard. And while Pennsylvania is losing aluminum bars, in the next state, what is leaving is not materials, but technology, data, and trust. Can you guess which state it is? Let's keep following along. From iPhones to trust, everything seems to be leaving California. It may sound absurd, but that is the reality gradually becoming apparent in the state once called the heart of innovation. Last May, Apple officially confirmed that it is gradually shifting all iPhone assembly operations from China to India, with plans to retain only minimal operations in the U.S. According to Bloomberg Technology, over the past 6 months, California has lost more than 4,300 jobs related to logistics, warehousing, and technical support for Apple and its supply partners. In San Jose, once a booming hub for startups catering to the Apple ecosystem, nearly 1 in 4 startups have either shut down or relocated. A former operations supervisor at the iPhone parts testing center in Fremont shared, "I wasn't laid off. I was just suspended indefinitely, long enough for me to understand that the position would no longer exist." Now he is living with his elderly mother, selling old equipment on eBay to maintain a minimal income. He is not disappointed with Apple. He just doesn't know where to start over, at an age when people are no longer retrainable. California used to be a symbol of opportunity, a place where every touch of technology could change your life. But now, gaps are starting to appear in the supply chain, in office buildings, and even in the dreams that were once nurtured from Silicon Valley. The elderly, those who once contributed to building the foundations of the tech industry, now feel abandoned by the very world they once supported. If even technology, once the pride of California, is leaving, then what will still keep the dream alive in this land? However, there are still glimmers of hope. To support the elderly in stabilizing their lives after the economic upheaval, in the Bay Area, AARP California is expanding free digital skills courses for those over 50, helping them adapt to new technologies and transition jobs. Have you ever worked in the tech field, operations, or lived through the boom of Silicon Valley? Share your story, so that those who are confused know they are not alone. If California is struggling to regain its position in the tech industry, in another place, the loss is not as loud as in California. There, just one factory closing, and the whole town will be plunged into darkness. That's Indiana. In Indiana, if a factory closes, perhaps the whole town will be left in the dark. That's not a metaphor. That's what the people of Kokomo, Indiana, are saying to each other every day, after Stellantis paused production at the main factory in the middle of town. According to the Indiana Business Journal, in just the first 3 months of 2025, Kokomo lost more than 1,200 direct and indirect jobs related to Stellantis. More than 65% of small shops around the industrial area reported a decline in revenue, and 3 local schools had to cut their budgets because families of students moved elsewhere. Local officials have called Stellantis' departure from the Kokomo transmission plant an unanticipated circuit cut, not just for the automotive industry, but for everyday life in Indiana. A former foreman at the plant shared, "I started working here when I was just a 19-year-old kid. I witnessed the town develop around the factory. Now it's the opposite. The town shrinks with each line that shuts down." His son is planning to move to Ohio, and his wife is now working part-time at a grocery store, just to cover the health insurance costs. And sadly, industrial towns like Kokomo have no Plan B. When the sole pillar withdraws, the entire community falls into a state of limbo, neither bankrupt nor recovering. Assets depreciate, houses are abandoned, the youth leave, the elderly remain with memories that no one remembers anymore. In that darkness, there are still rays of light trying to shine through. In Indiana, Feeding America is implementing a program to distribute free food to elderly individuals living alone, in collaboration with the Maya Foundation and local church organizations. But many people still have a lingering question in their minds. When an entire generation lives for an industry, only to witness it quietly fade away, what remains of that community's value? Did you ever grow up in an industrial town like Kokomo? Are the factories in your hometown still operating? Leave a message. Maybe someone in Indiana needs to read about what you've overcome. And now, let's move on to the sixth state on this list, where something as seemingly simple as a small package can change the fate of thousands, and that is Georgia. In Atlanta, once the fastest-growing logistics hub in the southern United States, hundreds of working-class families are struggling day by day, simply because small packages, clothes, accessories, cheap goods can no longer be delivered to their doorsteps as they used to. When the U.S. government ended the tax exemption policy for orders under $800 from China, the two e-commerce giants, Shein and Temu, had to restructure their entire shipping operations in the U.S., especially the warehouses located in Georgia. According to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, in the first quarter of 2025 alone, over 1,700 temporary jobs at Shein, Temu, and Logistics Partners warehouses in Atlanta were cut. The tax increase of up to 145% on cheap imported goods has led these companies to significantly reduce their marketing, hiring, and delivery activities. Do you remember the time when Georgia was considered the land of opportunity for immigrants, young families, and blue-collar workers? But now everything has changed, and sometimes even the locals can't keep up. Workers are losing their jobs, cheap goods are no longer coming in large quantities, consumer prices are rising, especially for low-income groups. Each undelivered package is not just a disappointment, but a chain of cascading risks, from overdue bills to the risk of losing one's apartment. The story of Georgia might make many of us ponder. When just a small change in tax policy can shake thousands of families, what have we become too dependent on in this life? Now, let's move on to the final state where people also want to leave because if they stay, there's only poverty, desolation, and a bleak future, and that is Alabama. They say to study hard. But after finishing school, then what? That is the question of a 21-year-old girl in the rural south of Alabama. After spending her entire childhood listening to her parents teach her that if she studies well, she will have a stable job and live right on her hometown land. But now, the companies have pulled out. The factory is closing down. The nearest university has also reduced its enrollment quota. That promise, it's nothing but a fleeting breeze. Alabama is one of the states with the highest density of small assembly plants and distribution centers serving the consumer sector in the southern region. But when companies like MGA Entertainment, Shein, and Temu simultaneously pulled their production lines out of China, they also scaled back their distribution systems in the U.S., starting with rural, low-cost states. According to the Alabama Economic Review, more than 6,000 workers at local factories and warehouses have lost their jobs in the past 8 months, mostly middle-aged workers and women. In some counties like Wilcox or Sumter, the unemployment rate exceeds 12%, nearly 3 times the national average. In many rural areas of Alabama, there are no newcomers, only young people leaving. The community is aging, schools are merging, the gas station turned into an abandoned warehouse, and the cycle of poverty continues because no one invests in a place that no longer yields profit. People stay not by choice, but because there is nowhere else to go. If a place was once good enough to enrich corporations but is no longer worthy of their stay, then what hope do the people there have? In some impoverished districts, the Dollar General Literacy Foundation program is sponsoring free vocational skills classes for people over 35 who want to change jobs. Additionally, TracFone and SafeLink Wireless provide free basic phones to low-income families who do not have access to traditional internet services. Did you grow up in a small town like Alabama? Did you leave, or are you still trying to stay? Let's share so we don't forget that America is not just about big cities, but also about the rural areas that are gradually losing their spark. We just passed through 10 states, 10 stories, 10 snapshots of an America that is changing. But the real question is, who is that change happening for? And what is it leaving behind for those who remain? We just passed through 10 states, from Michigan, where the auto industry was once a national symbol, to Alabama, where people are struggling to survive with the faint hope that things will get better. Each place is a snapshot, but the feeling is the same, a silent, cold change, without any alarm bells, yet strong enough to make those who were once stable worry about tomorrow. When companies, names once associated with hope and opportunity, quietly withdraw for profit, it is the people, those who have contributed their whole lives, who are left behind, in heavy silence. Is this still the America we once knew? None of us have the perfect answer. But at least we can speak up, share our stories, so that others know they are not alone. If you have ever experienced these things, or have loved ones living through silent changes, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to continue looking back at America with us from a more genuine and profound perspective, where your voice is also an important part. The content in this video is not intended to attack or hold any individual, business, organization, or government accountable. All information presented is based on publicly available data, press articles, and economic reports, and is utilized for educational purposes, raising community awareness and provoking reflection. We are committed to maintaining a neutral, humane perspective and respecting all parties involved. Thank you for watching until the end. See you in the next video.